So I was asked to do a video on the issue of Senate reform, and although I do feel that it is relevant, since if passed this would mean a loss of taxpayers' dollars, and it's ridiculous, um, but I do also feel that it is ultimately a distraction. I feel there are far more important things that are going on in this country, and we shouldn't allow ourselves to be too distracted by it. Nevertheless, it is ridiculous. Harper's trying to pass a 9-year term for senators, which I don't have a real issue with one way or another. I mean, the idea of senators that they're old and they're wise, but then again, 9 years is a long time for people who are already retired. You could argue it's a way of combating senility in the Senate. You know, um, it's a little iffy, but I mean, I don't really have feelings one way or another about that. I don't think many people would, frankly. Even in 9 years, they still clear $1 million. These are men and women who have retired and may have pensions from other jobs, and then you become senators, and even in 9 years they'd make $1 million. There's certainly not anything for them to complain about when it comes to that. And then they get a pension, of course, after retiring from the Senate. But the problem with this is that with 9-year terms, you're going to have more senators who are retired who are drawing pensions, so there's more of an expense. But of course, also there's the expense of having Senate elections, obviously. And on the surface, it might look good. Okay, Harper's giving some power to the provinces. He's not a control freak dictator after all. He will give some power away. No, he's not. He's maintaining the right to appoint whoever he wants to his Senate and to reject anyone in his Senate. He's under no obligation in this legislation to approve any of the senators that are elected. So in other words, Nova Scotia could have an election, and we could elect a senator named, I don't know, John Green. Okay, we like John Green. We think he has the right stuff. Boy, he can sit in that chair and he can say yes to legislation. He can do it. So, okay, we elect John Green. But John Green is a liberal. He's outspoken against Harper's ideas, and he'll probably be a trouble rouser in the Senate. He'll speak out against Harper's ideas and rile people up to maybe vote against some of his bills. And is Harper likely to approve him? Hell no. Hell no. This is why Harper is holding on to this power. He's only going to want to accept conservative-leaning senators, of course. Of course. This is all a joke. This makes it look like he's actually giving some power to the provinces, but he isn't. How stupid would premiers have to be to fall for this? But two haven't. Premiers for Ontario and Quebec are threatening to go to the Supreme Court over this if they are not allowed into the decision. They feel that the provinces should be able to vote on this legislation, that the premier should be able to vote on whether or not this legislation is adopted. But obviously for me that's not the issue. It's that this is ridiculous and it's a waste of money. The whole thing is a sham. You see, these elections are just pretend, really, because Harper can still appoint whoever he wants to. So it's all just a ridiculous, pointless waste of money. I don't know exactly why Harper's doing this. Perhaps he thought that that would make the premiers happy, that they wouldn't put up the fuss that some of them now are. Is that why he went and offered them? I don't quite get it. But Harper is a hilarious hypocrite, because remember during the federal elections, he kept pointing out the Canadian people do not want elections. The Canadian people do not want these elections. It is a waste of time and money. Now Harper has the gall to promote the idea, to suggest that we should have Senate elections, which is going to be a waste of time and money, but more so because Harper's still going to be able to reject senators that are elected and appoint whoever he wants into the Senate anyway. So the whole thing is a farce. It's a joke. And I do believe, though, that this is somewhat of a distraction, and it may be somewhat intentionally so. There are a couple of polls that have come out in the mainstream media that have alerted me to this possibility. And they're ridiculous. There's one poll that suggests that 61% of Canadians are concerned with this issue and have an opinion one way or another. I'm supposed to believe that 40% of the public don't bother to go and vote against a criminal government, and that 40% of those who do would vote in favor of a criminal government, and yet 61% have an opinion on Senate reform. My God, hell no. If you were to take a camera and go out and interview people at random, I bet at least half of them wouldn't even know what the Senate does. If you were to ask them, what's the difference between the upper house and the Senate? Some of them would have to actually stop and think about that one. If you were to ask them, what is a Senate reform about? I don't think most people would know. People are not that political minded. Maybe 14% of people know about this and are concerned about this. 14% maybe. Most people are not. I have to admit, I myself am not particularly concerned about this issue because I feel there are more important issues. But it is a waste of money if it is approved. And another poll says 72% are in favor of Harper's proposed legislation. How could they be in favor of something that they wouldn't understand, most of them? This is ridiculous. And it's a sign that the mainstream media is just trying to convince us that we are concerned about this. And it reminds me of the kind of strategy that the conservatives have been using for years now. The last time this was proposed to the Senate, the conservatives were saying that the senators were all going to vote in favor of this, that not one of them was going to stand out against it. But boy, were they wrong. The senators did stand up against it. That's a very cheap tactic. It's what Hollywood marketers do with Hollywood movies. They try to convince you through the ads that everyone's going to go out and see this new movie, even though it hasn't opened yet. They must be psychic. Somehow they know psychically that everyone's going to go and watch it but you, so you better go and watch it too. It's a cheap tactic, and that's what the conservatives seem to do. And that's what this seems like to me, just propaganda. But on the other hand, this could be the mainstream media's way of just trying to convince us that we are interested in these issues and this particular subject because they're not allowed to report on the more important subjects, really, anymore in this country. So maybe that's it, but it's ridiculous. And talk about hypocriticism by Stephen Harper. So anyway, that's all I have to say on this subject. I do feel that on the whole it is a distraction, and we shouldn't allow ourselves to be too distracted by it, but at the same time, if passed, this would be a ridiculous waste of money. It's ridiculous legislation, and I do hope that the premiers show some brains and some heart, some passion, and stand up against this nonsense.